This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Regina Lee.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast here in South Charlotte. And I am really thrilled to have a conversation today with Robin Mermans. She is the owner and principal managing attorney for Road to Resolution. Welcome, Robin. How are you?
Hi, Regina. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So a little bit in what you guys do, it's divorce mediation and collaborative family law. So we have a lot. I have many directions I want to take our conversation. But first, I know you have a story, a personal journey, your why. And so let's start with that because I think it really sets everything up beautifully.
Thanks, Regina. Yeah, it is certainly why I am here today sitting in this seat. So I, like many others, got married in my 20s and found myself about 12 years later. And of course, it's not linear, but wanting to get a divorce. And at the time, this was in the early 2000s, all I knew was you hire an attorney and your spouse hires an attorney, and then you start the process. And that's exactly what we did. And what could have been probably a much more efficient and congenial process turned into something much more contentious. And so we each hired our own attorneys. We were pitted into our own separate corners, paid our retainer, and were told not to talk to each other. And mind you, we had 2 young children at the time. They were 6 and 9, and we were all living under the same roof, and it created a lot of tension. And again, 6 months later, we had nothing to show for it, but just more bad energy between us. We ended up in our garage with a calculator and a pad of paper, and we basically struck a deal, like we had, formulated the stipulations that then became our separation agreement. And after that process, I was actually working for a Fortune 100 company in the legal department, not as an attorney, but in compliance. And I saw an opportunity. There's a better way to do this. And so I did some research. I found out about mediation, which was not brought to my attention at the time when we started the process. Learned about mediation, and I left that corporate job and I started a mediation, divorce mediation practice called Road to Resolution. I did that for a year. And as I went through it, I realized, and I actually had clients, and I went through it and I realized I'm going to get slapped with unlawful practice of law if I keep doing this. So I went to law school. Yeah. I went to law school, and fast forward 3 years and 2 bars later, I'm licensed in both North and South Carolina. I added collaborative family law to our services at Road to Resolution. And essentially our firm, we specialize in what's called alternate dispute resolution. So mediation, collaborative law, to help families come to agreements outside of the courtroom.
So you're saying that mediation is different from collaborative divorce?
It is. So collaborative divorce is actually governed by statute in the state of North Carolina. And last I checked, we were one of only 6 states that actually had a collaborative divorce specific statute. And what the statute says, it's not very long, but what it says is that the 2 attorneys and the 2 clients must enter into a participation agreement. And that participation agreement must state that if the 2 attorneys and clients can't come to a resolution outside of court, the 2 attorneys must recuse themselves, and they and no one in their law firm can represent the clients in litigation. So the clients essentially have to pack up, go find new attorneys, and start over. And that's an incentive for people to settle their differences out of court. Now, our practice group here in Mecklenburg, we have added a lot more provisions to that participation agreement, like full voluntary disclosure of all relevant information, transparency. We agree in the holistic approach and team approach. Whereas if there's a difference in, let's say, custody, rather than going to court and tearing each other apart and then having a judge make a decision based on what each side represented, and the judge, who's never met the parents or the child or children, make a decision. We decide to bring in a child and family therapist to help us with that. So it's I call it the legal side of conscious uncoupling, is what collaborative divorce is. Mediation is a tool that's used in the litigation process, also in the collaborative divorce process. And essentially what mediation is you a client and attorney, and both clients, and their attorneys will go to a mediator's office, let's say, and the mediator will go back and forth between those parties and try and help them bridge the gap if they're unable to, if there's an issue that they're unable to come to resolution on. So that's more of a tool in the toolbox, whereas collaborative divorce is actually a process that is parallel to litigation, but much different than litigation.
So does the husband and the wife have their own collaborative attorneys?
Yes.
Or is it, okay. So yes. They're not coming to you and working. Okay, I get it. So how do you know if you're a good candidate for collaborative divorce? Does usually one think so? And do you have to persuade the other? What does your experience show?
So people show up in all different ways. I actually offer what's called a pre-divorce education, which is approved by the bar. Just a little background. Attorneys ethically can't meet with two opposing parties. And when you're divorcing, in the eyes of the law, you're opposing parties. However, I did talk to the bar, North Carolina bar, and received approval from the bar to meet with people together and to have what's called a pre-divorce education. In that meeting, I'm very, very limited on what I can talk about. And the two things that I can talk about is Divorce 101 in general, what the legal issues are, which are always the same, right? And unless you have children or don't have children, that's really the only thing that differs. But you have the same legal issues. You've got equitable distribution, you've got support, alimony, or spousal support, same thing, child support and child custody. And I'm able to talk generally about those issues and what type of information you need to solve those, et cetera. And then the process options available to you. So at the end of every untangling of a family, you want to untangle your financial affairs, you want a parenting plan. How do you go about doing that? Well, you can litigate, you can go through a collaborative divorce, or you can, sit around a table and try and negotiate your deal yourself around the kitchen table. So I go through all the different process options available to them. I can't answer any legal questions. And then from there, they decide if they want to enter into the collaborative divorce process. And if they do, we can only represent one party. And then the other party would have to hire a collaborative attorney as well.
Okay. So they have to have a collaborative as well.
Correct. And to answer your question, like, how do I know if people are a candidate? Yeah. So generally when people are walking in my door, they've read my website, and my website is very clear that we are all about out-of-court settlements and not about going for the jugular. And so even just someone reaching out and coming here and spending the money to sit and learn tells me that they're a good candidate for it. So I feel very fortunate. We feel very fortunate as a firm that most of the people that make their way to us are candidates. It's very rarely, it has happened a few times where I have said, this is not the right process because there's either some mental health issues or someone's not being honest.
Do you typically see both the husband and wife coming in together, or is it typically one of them gathering the info and then saying to the other one, this might be great for us?
We see both.
Okay.
We see, and equally, quite honestly, we see both.
So what are some of the misconceptions that you run into in this type of divorce?
So, people think when we say a collaborative divorce, right? A client will come, will engage, will sign the participation agreement, which is what makes it a collaborative divorce. And we'll be getting into the process, and they find that there's a crossroads and they don't agree, that a husband and wife don't agree on something. And they'll look at me and they'll be like, this is not collaborative. And what I say to that is collaborative is a process, not a behavior. If you are untangling a family, there is a very good chance, and you're getting a divorce for, whatever reason, there's a very good chance you're not going to see eye to eye on everything.
Right.
So what the difference between collaborative and litigation is, in collaborative, when we come to those crossroads, we problem solve. We don't litigate it and fight and be conflict, right? We're like, okay, the two attorneys and the clients, okay, we're at a crossroads. So what do we do next? What information do we need to help us figure out a solution to this problem? Again, the misconception that just because you're in collaborative means that you're always going to get along. That's not the case at all. And I would argue it's a little harder. I know my litigation friends would not agree with this, but as collaborative attorneys, we sit in a room with two parties who are not seeing eye to eye, and we need to help them navigate that. Whereas in a courtroom, you're just filing papers and then standing in front of a judge and then arguing, right?
I love your term untangling. That just makes a lot of sense, a whole lot of sense, having gone through that. Your website is amazing, by the way. It is the perfect place for our listeners to start if this is kind of the path that they're thinking about. And I just really love your approach with everything. So last question, when you're not doing all of this, what does Robin like to do for fun? Or do you have time?
I do. I think it's important to have a balance in life.
Yes.
I have a lot of hobbies. So first and foremost, my family. We have a blended family. We have 5 children, 2 have graduated college. I know 3 are still in. And nothing gives me more pleasure than to be with my family. I love spending time with my adult children who just bring me so much joy. The other thing, I would say there's 2 other things that really occupy my time. The second thing outside of my family is I'm very involved in the community from a philanthropic standpoint. I sit on several boards, and I think it is an obligation that I have that I give back to the community that has given me so much. And then the third thing is I love sports. I'm a big yogi. I love playing pickleball. Yeah. So I ski. So anything that I'm an adrenaline junkie, essentially. I like to scuba dive. And so I would say between family, philanthropic work, and exercising, those are what occupies my time outside of the office.
Well, Robin, you are an impressive woman. Very excited to have chatted with you. So let's wrap it up by letting our listeners know, how do they find you guys and reach out?
The best way to reach us is via our website, which is ROAD, ROAD2TO, resolution, RESOLUTION.com. And you can also call us at 980-260-1600.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing you out in the community, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me, Regina.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpsouthcharlotte.com. That's gnpsouthcharlotte.com, or call 980-351 5719.